everybody. It is Tuesday, May 6th. Good to be here. It is a late one for me tonight. A very long day, which means that this episode might be a little bit rough around the edges. In fact, I know it's going to be rough around the edges. In fact, I did not even comb my hair. Pretty hot and sloppy day. Um, did some sweating. Not that I was the one working real hard, but I watched other people work hard, and that made me sweat. I was at a track meet, folks. Just relax. So I planned a late night episode, one that I could carry on my own. I didn't even try to reach out for guests. However, actually, maybe I'll wait for other people to pop on before I put this out there. If you know me, I might find a way to let you either call in or something later on if you join me. But since that doesn't seem likely at this particular moment, I'll just keep moving on. So tonight's topic is why I am not an anarchist. I could also rename this why I am not a liberal, why I am not a progressive, or why I'm not a pacifist. Actually, a lot of these things are all really well connected, and definitions are going to be the problem uh, that we're going to be wrestling with in this episode, because the definition of all the terms that I just stated are disputed in a lot of different ways. Anarchy, there's like a bunch of different perspectives on it. Libertarianism, same thing. Liberalism, same thing. Progressivism, same thing. And it would be really easy to get into an arm wrestling match over the definitions. And I frankly don't want to do that. This podcast is not the scholar cast, which doesn't mean that I don't try to make sure that I know what I'm talking about. But this is not a college university. It's a podcast. Okay, so you guys just need to lighten up if you're one of those people. You know who I'm talking about, right? Um, so we're not going to get bogged down too much on definitions if I can help it. But to skip through a lot of um, to let you know where I am now, so you have a frame of reference on where my views are. I do call myself a libertarian constitutionalist or a constitutionalist libertarian, which is as clear as mud. It's like everything else. I'm going to have to explain what it is, but that's where I've landed. And sure, people could call me a conservative, and as a matter of epistemological shorthand, if I introduce myself to people and we're talking about these kinds of things, I'll say, yeah, I'm a conservative, just because, usually you don't want to get bogged down on the weeds. But um, the reason why I have the word libertarian and conservative in these, like, constitutional libertarian together, is because I believe that there's aspects of conservatism that miss the mark, and by emphasizing the libertarian and the constitutional part, it's my way of helping to introduce those points and try to make the case for why conservatism should embrace things like limited government. And you would think that, like, that's what conservatism is, but a lot of times it just isn't. Sometimes, a lot of times, conservatism looks as much like big government as any other kind. It's just our kind of government. But again, I digress a little bit. So tonight, so my name is Anthony Horvath. Not that you care. No, maybe you do. You might care. That's why you're here, right? Let's make sure my audio works here. Seems like it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so if you've been watching, I've been having mic problems. The batteries on these, I thought they were good. I've been proven wrong. I bought new microphones, but they're not going to be here till tomorrow. So someday I'll have a lot of money and I'll be able to get the top flight stuff. And you can help by like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, tell all of your friends, even make new friends, and point them to this channel. And then maybe someday I can afford a really awesome mic. And also, um, Jamie, I need my own personal Jamie off to the side here, who does not exist, but I hope someday will. I am a publisher and a writer, and we try to promote the books that we publish or feature on our online retail site at gutenbookpress.com. And tonight's book is about Anarchy, The Man Who Was Thursday by G.K. Chesterton. I guess the lighting is not so great there. I have a picture. There we go. And the links to this book are in the description. So if you like G.K. Chesterton, if you've never heard of G.K. Chesterton, this is a great introduction to his book. And he was writing it when the anarchists were all the rage. They're kind of all the rage today, but today they're mostly rage. And it's just not quite the same thing, if you know what I mean. So let's just jump right into it. Anarchism with the Tolkien quote. So this is J.R. Tolkien, and he wrote this in a letter. I have the letter. I verified the quote. This is really what I want to say. He's writing, if I remember correctly, shortly after World War I in this context. And, he says, my political opinions lean more and more to anarchy. It's an interesting thing to hear a man like him say. He's a very thoughtful, well-read man. You wouldn't think he would say anything like that. But this quote actually continues. The most improper job, he says, the most improper job of any man, even saints, is bossing other men. Not one in a million is fit for it, and least of all those who seek the opportunity. If I could just summarize, we're governed by morons. In fact, they're idiots. Most of them are just so stupid. They're dumber than a box of rocks. And also, greedy, corrupt, all these things. And that's just the nature of the way power works. It attracts not the best people, but the worst people. And the ambitious people are the ones that end up in power, and the ones that we want to be in power are not. And that is a great frustration, I think, is it not? I mean, it's one of the most frustrating things for me as well. And we see that a lot of times what happens is people who start out good at the, maybe we'll say the county level, and then they get elected at the state, and then they move on to Congress and the Senate. It's just like they become different people. They're not the people that we elected, and it's a great frustration. So how do you stop it? This is the problem. But I resonate a great deal with what Tolkien is saying here. I really do. In fact, I mean, I think he's right. This analysis is right. The most improper job of any man, even saints. This is a reference to Christians, in case you're wondering. Is bossing other men. Absolutely right. People aren't even fit for it. Excuse me, I just gotta do something there real quick. Not one in a million. Yeah, this is right. So is anarchy the solution then? Is anarchy the way we should go? If a man is smart and wise as J.R. Tolkien can come to this conclusion, then maybe we should be thinking it even more. In fact, I have I had another book. We talked about Jacques Ellul, and I've been reading his book again. Dang it, I left it downstairs. On Christian anarchism. Jacques Ellul, he had the bit on propaganda. If you want to go back through our podcast and find Ellul, Ellul, he was an avowed anarchist, a Christian anarchist, and essentially the idea is that no man should have power over any other man, and um, no man should seek to have that power. So here's the first pitfall, I think, with anarchism. Why I'm not an anarchist is simply that it doesn't matter what you like. you could say, um, you could say no man should seek power over other men, but newsflash, they do, and they will never stop. They will never stop. So um, the actual effect of any viewpoint that makes it its defining rule that it will definitely not exert power over another person is to ensure that power is exerted over them. But I will return to that. I love this quote. I resonate with this. In fact, let me just kind of make it as like a shorthand kind of a statement. Like, to me, this sentiment is in lines with the sentiment of like your of any good healthy person at some point in their life. At some point in your life, probably anyone who has any kind of any moral sense of direction whatsoever surveys the scene and realizes that it's all crap. The people in charge are terrible, and the only way the only way through it is to just get rid of all the power structures whatsoever, just to strip away all the power whatsoever. And I think that instinct is fair and reasonable, and everyone with a healthy moral bone in their body probably feels that too. But it's a little bit like the 5-year-old who asks his dad, "So why do we even have money? Why do we have to have money? Because money's so bad. Causes so many problems. People are doing everything with money and stuff." And I think I think all of my kids ask me this question, and maybe not at the age of 5. Um, at one point or another. And as a teacher, when I was a 7th and 8th grade teacher, I heard it. Um, depending on the conversation, I've heard it a lot. Is the point from young people, but eventually you get a little bit older and you realize that the reason why we have money is because nobody wants to stuff chickens in their pockets and then like try to go buy a car with them. You know, here I would like to buy that car. Here are 10,000 chickens. It just doesn't work. Um, it sounds nice in theory, but in practice is completely unworkable, and reality asserts itself. I have another quote I want to share before I move on from this. Um, I hope that no one gets the impression that I think J.R. Tolkien was like a 5-year-old, because I don't. C.S. Lewis said something very similar. And again, I think that he's right in this. What he's saying here. Aristotle said that some people were only fit to be slaves. Lewis says, I don't contradict him, but I reject slavery because I see no men fit to be masters. And I think both of these sentiments here are representative of that anarchical spirit that I'm referring to, that is the pure and innocent part of it, the recognition that there really is no one out there who ought to have any kind of real power. It just shouldn't happen. But here we are. So, anecdote before I move on. I rejected anarchy many, many years ago. As I said at the very, very beginning, I used to be a liberal, and I rejected that for many of the same reasons why I'm not an anarchist or pacifist or progressive. The things are all connected by the point that they just don't work in real life. And the problem is, I think that whatever worldview you decide to settle on as being true, um, well, what is true will actually like work in the real world. So, for example, let's say that you believe a passenger bus moving 55 miles per hour down the highway is not a dangerous thing at all. But the truth is that it is, and if you step in front of it, you're going to be squished. Okay, so having the true and proper belief about the danger that a 55-mile-per-hour passenger bus poses will work, because you will not test that. You will not stand in front of that bus. So it works, and truth works, and other things don't. So to bring it back to Chesterton here, I don't have his book handy to show you. I don't have it plugged, but his book Orthodoxy makes, I think, the really fundamental point that I'm going to be coming back to a few times in this. He makes the contention that the Christian doctrine of original sin is really the only doctrine that can be really proven in more or less empirically. The doctrine of original sin is the contention that we were created good, even perfect and flawless, but because of the fall of man, every person is in a degenerate state. Even if we've been rescued and restored from that through the work of Christ, we still have this old Adam. This old Adam is the thing that makes all these isms not work that I mentioned: anarchism, pacifism, liberalism, progressivism. But then, I would say that you could say that original sin makes sure that even conservatism and libertarianism don't work either, um, or constitutionalism. None of these things work. That's that's right. So you'd be like, okay, we have not really moved things at all. But wait, there's more. Because some of these systems at least incorporate into their system the idea of something like original sin. And because of that, they are somewhat insulated from the effects of not believing in something like original sin. Now, call it whatever you want. Um, you can pretend that people are blank slates if you want, that they're only corrupted by the environment or the power structures or whatever. And that if only we got rid of the power structures, everyone would be living in a utopia right now. I mean, that's a psychotic belief um, that has been entertained over the decades, surely. But if you believe that, then you leave yourself open to being abused by the fact that there are people who are going to be corrupt, powerful, and evil, and they're going to use it against you. So that's that's kind of why I'm the constitutionalist part, because I believe in the checks and balances. But let's just before I get a little further into that, let's go through some of the stuff that I read, because yeah, I'm not a scholar, I admit it. I don't pretend to be, but I try to be well read. I haven't actually read this one yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I think this guy's an anarchist. The Failure of Nonviolence. This is going to be good. I can just tell. It looks like an anarchist. So a lot of times anarchists will say, well, they reject all violence. But it depends on your anarchist. And a lot of them have concluded that, he's an anarchist, have concluded that the nonviolent approaches just don't work. This is a very strategic or a um, response to tactical realities. It's written by Peter Gelderloos. He's the author of How Nonviolence Protects the State, Consensus and Anarchy Works. So that's on my reading list. Can't wait to read it. It's going to be good. I have read this one. I don't know. I don't think he would describe himself as an anarchist. He's just your ordinary, God-fearing climate activist. How to blow up a pipeline. I love it. I love these people. Yeah, this is great. So we don't have the violence of the state. But, if you want to go around playing with high explosives to make a point, this is your guy. Are you sensing that I kind of feel like there are some internal contradictions to the overarching concept of anarchism? This one I really liked. Again, I don't know if he would describe himself as an anarchist. I did read this one. It was good. Can you see it? Critical theory of police power. There were some good things in here. Actually, and to make the point that I actually agree with a lot of the things that the anarchists say and contend. That's not where the problem is. And then I have lots of these books actually, but I don't even know if I want to show you guys this one. Oh yeah, why not? An anarchist cookbook, recipes for disaster. Yeah, this one. Let's see, guerrilla performances. Let's see here. Is it ever good to punch a Nazi? Yeah. Effigies. Good stuff in here. Yeah. So yeah, these are granted more what we would call left-wing anarchists, I guess we would say. But the contradiction so exposed is this: that anarchy is about it's Greek. It means a for the opposite. Arch is like Greek for like rule. Um, so no rulers, that kind of thing, no power. Um, but when an anarchist says that they don't think that anyone ought to have power over another, and they have a very, depending on which one you're talking about, a very broad understanding of what that power is. The problem they quickly run into is that in order to throw off the power structures that are being put onto them, requires them to exert power back, essentially to betray their whole paradigm in order to not just betray it, but like to basically concede that their paradigm is false, to that it is lacking, that it can't survive a real world test. Um, so I mean, who would be Martin Luther King Jr., right? He was a guy who did actually carry guns and was prepared to use them in self-defense, incidentally. But he chose to use nonviolence, and for the work that he did that we remember him the most for. And he actually succeeded in that. But where was I going with that? Oh, he was a guy who believed what he was saying, and he believed that if you tried to use violence to throw off the racism of 1950s America, it wouldn't work. It would be counterproductive. It would undermine their whole thing. The whole mission would fail. And so that's not the kind of people that we're talking about here. We're talking about people who say that they are for nonviolence and then like flip a switch and they can be ready for violence. Lovely people like the Antifas, just great hypocrites, some of the best hypocrites you've ever seen. And one of the things that I want to do in my life, it's a very small goal, but I have it, and that's to not be a hypocrite. If I can do that, as much as possible, not be a hypocrite, then that's what I'm going to do. If you're wondering what I'm drinking tonight, I am drinking Fireball. It's been a long day. I decided I needed a reward. If you're watching and want to post comments or questions, feel free. So I thought I might do a whole session on pacifism too. I don't know if I will, because a lot of the arguments are really the same. But how about this? I'll say this about the problem with pacifism too. If you ever had a whole society of pacifists, people like across the board accepted in that country, will say pacifism. Within two shakes of a lamb's tail, that country would be conquered and overthrown and ruled by the nearest country, right? It's not going to go down like Martin Luther King Jr.'s quest for civil rights, which incidentally, that technique and tactic only worked in America, really because of the moral conscience of the country, which was rooted primarily still at that point in the Christian heritage. So if you would have tried the nonviolent approach during other regimes, say like within China with Mao or Pol Pot or something like that, they would have just said, oh, so what you're telling me is you're just going to lay down all of your guns and your weapons and you're going to turn the other cheek? Well, thank you. Game over. We'll just wipe them all out. It only worked. It only worked in America because you had a certain kind of citizenry that was orientated to perceive the moral virtue of that perspective. Correct. Thank you, JB. Nonviolence didn't work in Tiananmen Square. My point exactly. So it is that pacifism actually is a worldview that only works when it is under the guidance and protection of the anti-pacifists. I don't know what that word would be, actually, come to think of it. Only because there are violent men who stand watch over the borders can the pacifist do his thing, even exist. And I think it's really kind of the same thing with the anarchist. The anarchist can really only exist within a system that tolerates the anarchist. If you had a whole country, a whole world of anarchists, that's not the right word, whole world, then it would probably be fine. Well, a whole country. Like there was an anarchist society that started up in northern Syria a few years back now. I believe was that during Trump's years, the first term? He withdrew the support, and then how'd that work? At any rate, the protection for that group was pulled away, and even though they had this beautiful little system of bottom up governance and equality and whatnot, the second that the Turks realized that they could come in and just wipe them all out and retake it, they did. Because it turns out that 500 anarchists don't stand up very well to 5 million armed soldiers. It's kind of a practical problem. Which isn't to say that a lot of the things that they say and advocate for are things that I disagree with. As I've said a couple times, I agree with a lot of the things that they say and advocate for. And the problem is, well, how do we get there? And unfortunately, we have to, if we're gonna get to that destination or move in that direction in any meaningful way, it has to do so in recognition of the fact that there will be others, a lot of others, and a lot of those people will have guns who will stand in the way, and that's just their absolute utter reality. Um, so couple maybe it was a couple months ago now, I was having some debates with some anarchists on X, and I thought this was really interesting. Um, I haven't really interacted with anarchists before X. I've interacted with lots of people, but I don't know how I got involved in this, but um, I just decided to start asking them some questions because they were really really strident in their views, and as I was saying, okay, I agree with that, but how are you going to continue to exist when you have so many forces that are trying to make sure that you don't exist? And one person made a statement, um, like I forget the weapon, but like it'd be something like a Gatling gun. It was something like, well, let's see what they do when they come through my door and they meet my Gatling gun, some whatever it was like that. And I just was like, I'm pretty sure an airstrike from 20 miles away or 200 miles away would pretty much end your Gatling gun threat pretty quickly. And I made some other points too. I said, well, okay, let's just assume that your fellow Americans are willing to just give you your distance, let you be alone, and I build your completely voluntary society of 5 people or whatever, out in the hills of Montana or wherever it was. Um, but what if hypothetically, like, your attitude spread and China invades America? I mean, is your Gatling gun? How's your Gatling gun gonna fare in that circumstance? It wasn't a Gatling gun, by the way. I don't remember what it was, but it was some sort of high-powered um, weapon of war. Um, so that my point is like, when if there was ever a foreign invader, you by yourself are not going to last very long. It's just like a practical reality. And I said, well, and as a practical reality, the reason why you don't have to worry about that foreign invader is because we have a country with all sorts of often oppressive power structures, but nonetheless, they have a very nice side benefit that foreign invaders um, look at America and think, I don't think so. Not right now. Maybe we'll wait for a long time. uh, for because obviously, if they could conquer us, they would, but they can't, right? So if you get rid of the army, you get rid of the United States military, you get rid of the police, um, you're gonna have the cartels. You're gonna have the Hezbollah. I mean, they'll all be here, right? And there won't be anyone to stop them because you just got rid of all the power structures. So I made this case, and then he started getting really hostile with me. And I just said, okay, look, don't, like, in your scheme, isn't it like don't you agree that it's only going to ever, like, it could only work if you could persuade and convince people at scale to agree with you? He said no. How could that not be true? I said, don't you think this would be like, I said, I agree with you on a lot of the things that you've already said. I'm like a quasi ally. Um, just help me get over these hurdles. Like, don't you think that would be useful or helpful for your cause, your anarchy cause. No, really, the that really strikes me as a little psycho, actually. And I've now had quite a few interactions with anarchists that are a lot like that. So, will persuade me. Well, no. Then what do you think's going to happen? I mean, is everyone just sort of supposed to like have this like Damascus moment where they're walking down the road and they're saying, "Oh, well, I guess I just need to go buy a Gatling gun and hide in my home and ignore all the things that allow me to do that are in absolute contradiction to my anarchy." There were a couple times where I even invited them onto this blog. I found two or three. They weren't all anarchists, so if we include them all, I've probably invited 5 or 6 of the more sane people that I was speaking with. So a couple of them were anarchists. Say, okay, then I have a blog. Yeah, I don't have a lot of people who are watching it, but it's not about that, right? Shouldn't you want to persuade people? Shouldn't you seize every opportunity? Because you won't exist if you don't have a lot more of you. Um, and I'll give you the platform and let's talk about it. And they said no, not interested. The anarchists said. The other ones considered it, but the anarchists were like, no, just like a serious chip on your shoulder kind of a thing. So I've given them some real world opportunities to like try to get over what I perceive to be some very significant hurdles to anarchy as a system. So let me kind of go over a couple of these other points. Let me again use the example of pacifism as my example, and also like the hypocrisy that I see in the viewpoint. I have had arguments over the years with pacifists as well, and some of them were Christians who actually told me straight up that if somebody broke into their house and were raping their wife, they would do nothing in by way of violence to stop them from raping their wife because Jesus said, "Turn the other cheek." Well, you don't know me very well, a lot of you, but I I I consider that to be about as evil a position as you can get, and you can cloak that in turning the other cheek all you want, but you're a sick bastard if you're going to stand there and under the guise of nonviolence, not try to keep your wife from being raped. There, I said it. That's right, I said it. But here's the kicker. I've had about 3 of these conversations. These were all Christians, by the way, the examples I'm giving. I said, but would you call the police? Well, yes, of course I would call the police. I mean, what kind of a asshole do you think I am? Or whatever. And so what would the police do you think when they got there? Please, sir, could you kindly stop um, assaulting this woman with your genitalia? No, they're going to use violence, right? So if the pacifists in these scenarios, I get the same trajectory in all 3 conversations. Um, like they were almost all identical in this trajectory from I would not do anything to stop them from raping my wife, but I would call the cops. The cops are going to use violence, right? So the only way that is a tenable position with any kind of integrity whatsoever is if you say, "Is sorry, hon, rum luck, but we're Christians and we just got to take it, and that means we can't even call the cops." That would be a consistent position. Um, Pretty disgusting and vile, still, in my opinion. But this again speaks to, I'm trying to call attention to sort of the hypocrisies that emerge from these viewpoints that really they can only exist by reference to an appeal to the power structures that in one breath they condemn, but in the other breath they call for. So they're still going to call the cops if something happens. Um, they're going to call the fire department if something happens. They're going to call disaster relief if something happens. They're going to do these things, and I don't necessarily blame them for doing that. The problem is, can we come up with a worldview that is not hypocritical, that recognizes the abuse of power, that can happen, while also recognizing that inevitably power structures will be erected, and by recognizing that they will be erected, at the very least, minimum, maybe we can do something to try to hold them in check, to try to hold them back, to moderate them. Um, and I think that's ultimately why I'm a conservative, or excuse me, a constitutionalist libertarian. I think that the Constitution provides the system of checks and balances that deals robustly with the ambition of evil men, and not that it's been held to very consistently, actually, not at all, pretty pathetically, actually, but better than a lot of systems that are out there, nonetheless. But in the libertarian aspect, is the to just drive home the point that the Constitution enshrines unlimited government, and there's a lot of things that are done through the government that it's pretty clear that the framers would detest. They would freak out if they knew how much taxes we were allowing ourselves to have levied against us. I would like to write a short story sometime when the framers come back through, I don't know, time warp or whatever, and are dropped into uh, 2025 California or something, and they see all the rules and regulations and taxes, and then of course they're like outraged and they want to start a new revolutionary war, and then all of the progressives are like, dude, bro, this is just cost of doing business, man. You gotta this is what you gotta do if you live in civilization, right? And so the framers sort of like are in my short story, they're like walking through the city streets trying to raise a revolution, and all the people are like, no, we like paying 70% of our taxes and getting crap in return, poor services, and like no justification whatsoever. It would be that's how it would end. um, I know that's how it would end because that's where we're at right now, but I'll come back to that maybe in a little bit. So I wanted to take just a few minutes, something that I thought would be an interesting exercise is to go onto X, and I'm not gonna belabor this too much. I think I've made some of the biggest points. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get this up here. And what I did was I put up. I just put in a search term. For anarchy here. Still broadcasting. Okay. And I thought when I saw a point that I thought might be of interest, I would respond to it. See if we can find some real anarchists. So I don't. Maybe you not respond. Uh, losing my straw man. Okay, here. Okay, that's commentary on some incident. I'm trying to find something that talks about like principles. Ah, here we go. Market anarchists. Taxation is theft. Property taxes is extortion. Income tax is punishment for being productive. I agree. Yeah, people don't like the Antifa. I don't like them either. Um, this, it's the same anarchist. Statists are eroding these great achievements. Yes, I agree with that. As I was looking before, I thought I saw a pretty. I don't know if I'm going to see it again here. Okay, wow, what? I'm getting lots of them from this guy, Market Anarchist. I don't follow him, do I? No, I don't follow this guy. Let's see. Capitalism has failed. Socialism has failed. It's time for a third way. So that's the problem. Okay, yeah. I don't know about the capitalism has failed. I'd be in the more like in the capitalism hasn't been tried camp. Let's see what people say. Third way. um, Shooting against Marxism as an anarchist is like shooting into your own leg and trying to run a marathon. Interesting. Oh, I love this one. State socialism didn't fail. LOL. Read a book for once and you won't be an anarchist no more. Well, I love that. Read a book. I had a guy, again on X, who told me, read a book. And I hadn't heard that in like 20 years. I mean, like 20 years ago, I used to always hear, read a book. But apparently it's come back as a thing. So I said, well, what book? Maybe I have it. I mean, I showed you. I have a nice little collection of anarchist books, most of which I have read. I'm not saying I'm a student of anarchy or anything, but show me your book. Well, I don't. There's no book recommendation here. Just read a book. Um, every anarchist is an idiot. All right. I'm not gonna do too much of this. Okay, let's do this one. I don't know what. See what happens if I do this. I don't know. All right, I don't know what this guy's replying to, but this is a good point. This is where I'm my point, like my contention is. Being a cop is a choice. If you don't like being called a fascist pig, simply stop being an effing cop. Your choice to become a cop is a decision that you consciously made and make anew every day to your work. You don't like the rep, quit. I don't know who he's replying to. But here's the in an anarchist state, they of course they're not going to like the word state, right? Um, in an anarchist system, you know, that as part of that, it's going to become necessary when it gets if as soon as it gets of any size whatsoever, that they're going to appoint people to exert quote police powers, right? So let's take the ideal anarchist situation. In fact, let me look up that. I'm really curious to know what was that Syria anarchist that wasn't a commune. Yeah, I guess I need to use Google and not Amazon for that search. Syria. It's northern Syria. Let's see here. The Democratic Autonomous Administration of North and East. Rojava. Yes, 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 Rojava. Yes, Puerto Rojava. I remember now. I'm pretty sure that what I'm thinking of doesn't exist anymore. I'm just curious to know, like, I'm pretty sure this group, if I remember correctly, Like everything was done by a vote, whether it was a big issue, a little issue. I'm looking at over at Wikipedia here. That's why I'm glancing. They would have a vote on it. But can you imagine that at some point they took a vote and there was a small group that was like, you know what? No, this is a really stupid thing. Maybe the vote was like two like democracy being two wolves and a sheep voting on what to have for dinner, right? And maybe they were the sheep in this situation, and they're like, no, we don't want anything to do with it. Uh, they're going to appoint some people to go and exert power. My point is, as soon as you have any kind of assembly whatsoever of any kind of size, it will emerge as a thing, whether you like it or not, whether you denounce it or not, to appoint quote police officers, someone to use the police powers to go and force the people who do not like that vote and are absolutely adamant that it was an immoral outcome and they're never going to abide by it, to force them to do it. So this is hypocrisy, right? They're just not the minute that they ever got any kind of size and scale to be any kind of a force to be reckoned with, they would be making their own police force. I'm sure of it. Let's find one more. Well, that's true. Statists are trying to achieve utopia through a centralized monopoly on violence. Yes, that would be the Leviathan. Anarchists are realists who just want everyone to be free. Yes, but the reason why I have a whole pile of books over here to my left, um, of them thinking through how to use violence, and saying that nonviolence has failed is because wanting and actually achieving are two different things. All right, we'll do this. If you believe in power, you now have to answer his question. Probably this question. What gives you the right to use another person without their consent? Most political theories never even try. Libertarians have the answer nothing. So I don't know if he is also his anarchist Frodo, but he's saying libertarians. I'm not sure about this phrase. What gives you the right to use another person without their consent? I feel like that could be a loaded buzzword kind of a thing. Not really sure. But I think that it's fair enough to there is a fair question here that ought to be answered by everybody. Just get rid of all this. You know, what does give you the right to exert power over another? So I said that the anarchists, as soon as they had any number uh, to make any difference, would create a police force, would probably even create an army. And an army, anyone who's involved in the military knows that you've got to have a centralized chain of command, and the whole idea of voluntarism in that context, in a military unit of any effectiveness, it's yeah, no, it's not going to work. Yeah, maybe in small scale stuff like the Green Berets going out there and overthrowing a country with a toothbrush and a toothpick. But if you're talking about like giant frontline soldiering with giant armies clashing or whatever, no, your voluntarism is out the window. You've got the chain of command. There's no anarchy, and anarchists would create that as quick as anybody else because of necessity, as I said. Um, but this question of what gives you the right to use another, uh, what gives you the right to tell people to do what they don't want to do? This this is a question that needs to be asked, and the best answer that we've come up with in our republic is, well, we're gonna kind of take a vote on it, but we have checks and balances on it. We have, this is the constitutional part. And it's the only reason why this works, sort of, is well, there's only a certain amount of things that we're only going to vote on. Again, I realize, like, so much of this stuff has just been waved away, right? Because people don't really believe in the Constitution, even though they say they do. But I digress. Um, we we say that, okay, we're going to take a vote, and basically we agree to abide by that vote. But the reason why we agree is not because of some sort of utopian nonsense about democracy, but because we know from history what the alternative is. You know, sneaking into your opponent's house at night and shooting him in the head, and then a few days later having that person's kids sneak into your house and shooting you in your head, and escalating and over, and just, we've seen that. We know that that happens. Now, most people who live in, quote, democratic systems right now that do this, they do have their fanciful, completely ignorant, and almost utterly asinine, really, if you really try to think the best possible, like this mythical, like, goodness that, we took a vote, and 51% of us say that the other 49% are going to be our slaves. Yay, democracy! Yay, democracy! Yeah, so that's why in our Constitution, um, we had a lot of struggle with the whole slavery issue, and why the ultimate answer was, we can take votes on a lot of things, but we're not going to allow enslaving people to be something that we vote on. We're also not going to allow votes on child sacrifices, um, things of this sort. So there are boundaries on it, and unfortunately, there are people who are ready and raring to get rid of those boundaries and just open it up and say, if you've got 300 million people and 150 million and one people believe that we should do a total confiscation, just insert whatever it is, crazy thing, crazy overreaching thing, then it's legitimate because, hey, it's democracy. But the question that still hasn't been answered, of what really gives you the right to use power against another person? That's an entirely different question, and it hasn't been answered really by any system, to tell you the truth. We just sort of muddle through it. I think we can come up with some things that I think that are useful, with limited applicability. Earlier in the broadcast, I talked about the burglar who breaks into the burglar, the person who breaks into a house and attempts to rape a man's wife. Um, I'm gonna, if that happens in my house, I'm exerting power over that person pretty rapidly and pretty decisively, and I'm not gonna sleep less about it. I'm not gonna lose a wink of sleep about it. I'm not gonna be traumatized about it. I'm not gonna say, oh, I killed a man. Oh, this war. No, no, no. I'm gonna sleep like a baby. Um, for a good 14 hours. What right do I have to exert power over that person in that context? Can we put our finger on it? Can we distill it into a principle? I think we can come up with some principles. I think we can, but it's hard to extrapolate those to a whole government, to 500 million people. We have three. What is it? 350 million people here in America right now, but 6 billion people in the world. So I think we have to recognize the limitations of what our systems and what we're trying to achieve. And this is again why I'm not an anarchist, but I am a constitutionalist libertarian. To recognize that people will exert power, and if you say I'm not going to exert power, or I'm going to just go it alone, it doesn't matter. They're still coming after you. They're still going to chase you down. They're still going to tax the hell out of you. They're gonna rob you blind. You can say that you're a pacifist. You can say that you're a anarchist. You can say that you're a libertarian even, and you can say these things. They're coming for you. So what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? You can't. My point is, you can't throw out the systems. There's no way to have no system whatsoever. That's my conclusion. This is why I'm not an anarchist. This is also why I'm not liberal, progressive, or you have to have some kind of system. But if you start from the right premise, and the original sin being the one that I talked about at the very beginning, you might be able to come up with a system that avoids the worst of the extremes. But this requires a certain level of involvement by the people. I'm going to make a quick digression here. I just saw another expose, but I won't reply to that. Here's one of the other realities that we have to face. That all of us have to face. So you have the anarchists. Yeah, I've covered a lot of that, but my point is that you're never going to be able to convince more than 20% of the people to a lot of the things that we've talked about, and a lot of the things that I've said that I agree with libertarians and anarchists. I don't think we should be using taxes. I think we should have essentially a voluntary system in just about everything. Yeah, I'm with that. But the problem is that like only 20% of us, that's by far the top number, will ever desire any of that at best. The majority of people, a solid 80%, if not more, how do we call them? Sheep? Shall we call them sheep? That's kind of an insult. We don't have to insult them necessarily, even if some of them are just sheep. They're sheeple. There's just people who there's a lot of people who just want to mind their own business. They don't care about the radicalist things that are out there. I mean, they recognize that there's evil out in there. They try to do good in their own communities the best that they're able, but they're not actually very interested in politics. They don't want to exert power over other people. That's not what they want to do. They just don't really care. They more or less want to be left alone. And in that context, they want certain things. They want their Social Security payment. And if you tell them that by having their Social Security payment, it's probably going to bankrupt the whole country, don't trouble me with facts. These are the kinds of people that we're talking about. These people are, even though they're like non-activists, I'm not sure how to say it without insulting them again. Um, on the other hand, at the same time, are easily aroused to anger and condemnation if they feel that the deference to the state, we'll say, is not abided by. And we saw this very clearly with COVID, right? Very, very clearly. Um, Granted, there were a lot of people because of COVID that said that were converted, as it were, who are no longer progressives or statists or liberals, and are even like I've seen a couple on X who are like, wow, I cannot believe that I'm a conservative, even like they've even skipped right over the libertarian part and they're like conservative, like they're as astonished as anybody else. COVID did that, right? Overbearing statism did that. But there is a solid number of people, good 75% to 80% of people who are ready to just completely lay down all of their rights for a sliver of assurance that they'll be safe. Just the tiniest, just just so small, such a small assurance. They're ready to give it all up. And this is why I said kind of tongue in cheek that none of these systems will ever actually work. Nothing will work. Anarchism won't work. Progressivism won't work. Liberalism won't work. Pacifism won't work. Those won't work worse than a lot of the others. But even though libertarianism won't work, and constitutionalism won't work, and conservatism won't work, because you've got a lot of people that are just ready to give up all of their principles the minute they're scared, just even the tiniest little bit, and not just scared. It can be a lot of different things that like torment them, um, that drive them to be prepared to give up their rights and the rights of all the people around them, in a heartbeat. And so that's one of the realities that we have to build into our system. That's what I'm trying not to insult them too much, even though they infuriate me and sometimes even disgust me. But I also, like, I sympathize with them too. Like I don't want to be involved in politics. So I would rather just be left on my farm, left alone. I don't want to go out and run for office. I don't want to. But I know I have to do these things because I know that just because I want to be left alone doesn't mean they're going to leave me alone. And that's the reality. So in light of that reality, the only viable response is, besides like bitterness and hatred and contempt for mankind, is to step into that system and try to prevent it from being terrible. So none of the systems work. So what we have to do, I'm just gonna make it pitch case real quick. What we have to do is take into account original sin. Take into account the fact that 80% of the population are willing to give up their rights in a second on anything at any point, and also give up your rights. You have to take this into account, and also take into account the fact that you can't overpower 80% of the population. Like if 100 million, no, doing quick math, if 250 million people decide that they're going to crush 20 million people for being dissenters, they're going to do it, right? So unless like you have worked your way through the system and have fought hard for the checks and balances to make sure that there's only so much that the mob can do to you, that's the thing that we often forget. That's the missing ingredient in the a lot of systems, but the anarchical system too. is that it isn't just the tyrant we have to be worried about. It's the mob too. Now the mob can be easily controlled and directed towards bad things by a tyrant. They're easily manipulated, certainly. But the mob, in a way, has its own a mind of its own, and if you rely on the mob to gain whatever it is you think that you want to get, there's as much of a chance that you're going to be hung up from a wall naked with your entrails hanging out as Mussolini, right? Because the mob has spoken. The mob has spoken. So the American Constitution, which nobody abides by, tragically, ultimately does still have the answer. It's a limited government, and you've got the Bill of Rights, and we should stick to them. And the Constitution says it's only the things that are the enumerated powers. Only the enumerated powers are the things that the federal government should be doing. That's what it says. And then you got the Bill of Rights, because no sooner did they write that down, a bunch of them were like, well, no one's going to actually follow through with this. And they were right? But that's still the formula, I think, for maximum freedom. And it calls for a radically scaled back government. And unfortunately, at this moment in time, we're not going to get that. We're not going to see that. We're a lot of people, libertarians, were hopeful that Trump might be that guy. Well, he's not a libertarian, right? Sorry to break it to you, but he's not a libertarian. So he's not a limited government kind of guy. But we need a limited government kind of thing. But it has to go down. It has to trickle down all the way down to the county level. It can't, like, this is the thing. We need people at all levels of government. In other words, you can't step out of the system and condemn it as an anarchist and hope to not be left unmolested. Your only hope is to forget the anarchy thing and just say, I'm going to have to become involved at the local level. And when the people at the county board or whatever say, I have a really great idea. Let's make everyone install tracking devices to their electrical meters or whatever. We need people to say at that point, who are in that position, to say, no, absolutely not. Go. I almost swore. No. So the anarchist view, my take on them is to say, you could just go ahead and try to install that tracking device on my house. No. You're not going to be able to resist the SWAT team and the whatever. I mean, you can die, I guess, for this if you want. You can be shot dead in your house for it. No. I mean, you can do that, I guess. Die by your principles. Go for it. Thumbs up. What we need is someone at that meeting who's elected to say, you are like some sort of ridiculous Stalinist. What kind of a sick bastard are you? No, we're not going to do that crap. And we need somebody at the state in the assembly to do the same thing. Or whatever it is, at the county, at the village level, at the county level, at the state level, all the way up to the federal level. And we just don't have them. And that's ultimately what we need. And I'm not, I will be completely forthright. I am not optimistic that we're going to see all this in time. I think this is we have such a very large so much power overhead, we'll call it, that it just seems inevitable that it's gonna collapse, because there's just not enough people who love freedom down below to fight back. And we might not see it in the next 2 years, might not see it in 4 years, but we'll see it in our lifetime, I think. And the solution is going to be something more along the lines of what I propose, and not at all what the Anarchist proposes. So we do have a couple people watching. I'm gonna call it at that point. Does anyone have questions or comments? While I wait to see if anyone replies, um, again, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. These things all really help. I'm an author and a publisher. My name's Anthony Horvath. Follow me on X. Follow the Gutenberg Press account on X as well. We have about 30 authors that we publish, and we use this podcast to feature them. I'm a writer too, and I haven't really promoted much of my own books. I really need to change that. I need to start promoting some of my own books. They're really good books too, I would have to say. No comments yet. And just would encourage you to also share these with people. And I'll just give a quick housekeeping if you happen to have watched this far. I'm not sure this upcoming Thursday, I have another scheduling problem. It's not going to be a great day. If I have the podcast on Thursday, it'll be late like I'm doing now. But on Saturday, we're going to do a special daytime one, and we're going to have basically a concert. I'm going to have a guy playing guitar. It's pretty good. He's going to perform for us, and he's someone. This is really funny, but he's kind of like one of those crazy leftist dudes that I've been kind of like taking pot shots at this whole time. And one of the premises of Saturday's episode is, how we've managed to maintain that friendship over 30 years. A friendship between me, I guess you might call me a crazy right-winger, even if I do like flirt with anarchism, and that guy who's like, I don't want to say anything without like insulting him needlessly, but he's very, very leftist. And yet we're friends, right? So we're going to talk. There's three of us actually. We're going to talk about how to maintain a relationship internationally. People who disagree vehemently, and he's going to play the guitar and sing. So it'll be good. So thank you for watching this. Really appreciate it. We had some people watch it live. I really appreciate that too, and I know others will watch it later. And if you watched it this far, know that I recognize the gift that you've given me by giving me your attention for an hour and a half. But I shall not take it much more, because I'll just be repeating myself at this point. So, thank you. Have a good night. Maybe I'll see you on Thursday. Definitely, I hope I'll see you on Saturday. Okay. What do I gotta do here? Oh, yes. Have a good night.